What's up, guys? This is Rick from DFSOnDemand.com, and this is a few ways that I like to use the NBA game logs. All right, if you are unfamiliar with what game logs are or where to get them, I'll answer both of those questions right now. What you're looking at is a spreadsheet document of every game played by every player in the NBA this season. It has their entire line score, as you can see, how many three-pointers they hit, rebounds, assists, steals, all that good stuff. Had their salary for that day on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Also includes how many DraftKings and FanDuel points they scored, what the Vegas line was, whether the team was favored or not, and then what the total over-under was. The rank on the left-hand side here is where they ranked in terms of DraftKings points scored on each day. So for November 12th, Jimmy Butler was the highest scoring player on DraftKings. Where to get these? It's DFSOnDemand.com. I have a couple of past seasons for various sports, including the NBA, and I update these on a daily basis every morning if you are a pro member. All right, so if you've never used these game logs before, since this is just the raw data, it can be a little bit overwhelming and not sure really the best way to use it. So I'm just going to run through a couple of common ways that I use it and a couple of scenarios that present itself fairly often in terms of the NBA. So one of them I'd like to start with is the Las Vegas line. This comes into play a lot, especially with teams who are significant favorites for that evening. We call it the blowout factor, where a team is favored by 10, 12, 14 points, and you don't know if their stars are going to play the entire game. If they're up by a ton in the fourth quarter, maybe they're just going to sit. So this comes up a lot with the Golden State Warriors, and maybe I have a question about whether Steph Curry is going to be worth it tonight. So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort this by the player's name, and then I'm going to sort it by the line, the Las Vegas line. And what we'll be able to see here in a second is, first of all, you have every player and then how big the line was for that game. So we scroll down and find Steph here. Okay, so here is Steph Curry's 9 games that he has played this season. If we look across, we can see the Warriors have been, they've been favorites in every single game. And they've been significant favorites, 10 or more in 5 of these games, or 6 of these games. So we can see that these are the games here, and if we just highlight this, we'll be able to see that Steph averages 39.8 DraftKings points per game when the Warriors are 10 or more point favorites. Now, 39.8, let's compare that to his entire season. He's only averaging 39.3 for the entire season. So if you were concerned what the line is going to be, whether that's going to affect Steph Curry through the first 9 games of the season, you would know that no, it's not going to affect him. In fact, he's just about a half point better in games where there are significant favorites. Now, that's probably a sample size issue, but you'd be able to see that this is not really impacting Steph no matter what the line of this game is. So you can roster him. If you wanted to roster him in a 5-point game or a 15-point game, at this point in the season, it's probably not going to matter. Okay, another common scenario that comes up all the time is a player gets injured or he's resting on the back end of a back-to-back or something like that, and now his backup, the second-string player, is going to step into a much larger role. So now you have to determine, is this player worth it or not when they see an influx of new minutes? So I like to use this to show you, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort by player name again, and then I'm going to sort by most minutes. So for the example that I want to use here is Tony Parker and Patty Mills. So Tony Parker, getting up there in age, the Spurs are always very careful with their stars in terms of resting them throughout the season. So what that turns into is Tony Parker sits out a lot, and Patty Mills comes in and moves into the starter's role. So what we've done is we've sorted by by player name and by minutes played. So we can see here are all the games that Patty Mills has basically not started. right here. He's only played up to, 15 to 23 minutes. And then we have the games that he has played, 24 or 25 or more minutes. So now you can come over here and say, okay, well, when Patty Mills plays over 25 minutes, he's averaging 21.35 fantasy points. When he doesn't, he's only averaging 20.1 DraftKings points per game. So obviously with more minutes comes more opportunity for scoring fantasy points. So this is a good way to go in and diagnose a guy who's now stepping into the starting lineup, who he's going to see more minutes. Is it going to be worth it? What did he do this season when he's played more? Has it translated to more fantasy points? So that's just another thing I look at, because this is a scenario that comes up literally every single day. Okay, and finally here, I've manipulated the data just a little bit. I just hid the columns with the Las Vegas line so you could see it, and I added two more columns, which is the value a player achieved that night on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So if you're not familiar with the value calculation, for example, let's see if we can find somebody here. Aaron Gordon on this night, based on his DraftKings salary of $5,700. He scored 35 DraftKings points, which is 6.2 points for every $1,000 in salary, which is a good way to measure how well a player is doing across different salary points. So what I've done is I've just sorted, or I've just added those two columns, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to again sort by player, and then I'm going to sort by DraftKings value, and I'd like to see the highest first, the highest at the top of the list. So what we can do here is, I say this all the time, that not all players are created equal. Even if they have the same season average of points, they might get there in very, very different ways. Some guys are much more consistent than others, while other players can be very volatile and have huge range of outcomes when it comes to their scoring. So what I like to do is I like to use these logs to kind of identify those different players. So here's Kemba Walker, and Kemba has played 8 games this season. And if we look at the value that he has provided, you can see he has scored under 5 times value 3 times. He's scored 5 once, but he's, kind of trickled around the 6 area. But then he had this one game of 8.8 times value where he just exploded. So Kemba, to me, just looking at this on the surface, he's not a great cash game play, because half the time he's probably going to score you less than 5 times value. But he has the opportunity to explode. That's the type of player that I want to see in GPPs, because on those nights that he explodes, that gives you the opportunity to win a big tournament. So he's much different than a player like maybe Avery Bradley, who's having a really good start to the season. And not only is he having a really good start, he's having a really consistent start. So again, here's the 9 games that Avery Bradley has played this year. And yes, he has exploded for 11, 7 times. But you can see, has hit 5 times value in all but one game this year. So obviously, as his price is changing, and you can see here his price is changing. But as his price is changing, he's still hitting 5 times value. This is a guy who's much safer than most players in the league, because he's going to hit that 5 times number often. And then when his salary was really low, of course, he had some really good games too, with 7 and 11 times value. But keep in mind, these players they're different, right? They're not all the same. They're going to put up different ranges of outcomes, and you need to be aware of that. And just by looking at the game logs, I can get used to which players I want to roster in different formats. All right, so there you go. That's just 3 ways that you can use these logs. I mean, I probably use them in dozens of different ways. You can see with all this data, you have an opportunity to answer the questions that you have, to find out any trends that you want. At the very least, you can see who's scored the most fantasy or DraftKings points in any game this season. It's Anthony Davis with 99.5. Just some really fun stuff you can do here. You can see what players do against certain opponents, or how they do on the road versus at home. Really endless possibilities. So that's it for me. Shameless plug again. This is on DFSOnDemand.com. You can get the last couple of seasons, and if you want them updated daily, it is part of the pro membership, but in my opinion, well worth the price for some really cool information. So do me a favor and press the like button below, the thumbs up button. I'll keep making these videos, and let me know if you have any questions. Best of luck. See ya.